La 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 la. That's good. Welcome back, everybody. As we've seen, a lot of conflict over the past weekend and the consequences that are really starting to fall. So let's have a look.
A senior Iranian lawmaker now reporting that in what they call a decisive response to U.S. aggression against, again, what they call Iran's peaceful nuclear facilities, the Iranian parliament has voted to close the strategically vital Strait of Hormuz.
This is one of the ways that Iran can strike at the United States and the West as a whole dramatically with immediate effect. The effect this would have, if it's verified, on oil prices will be felt in markets, I would think, starting on Monday.
And this is true. There's already been a 3 to 5% spike in the price of oil per barrel that we've seen in the market as the uncertainty of the conflict really unfolds. But as far as the Strait of Hormuz goes, closing that down, if it's even possible for Iran to close down, because although America only gets 3% of its oil from the Middle East, this would affect many countries out there and would cause the international price of oil to go up. So that's really how it hits the US. And so while, yes, we're going to see some initial price rises and surges in gas prices at the pump all across the country right now, while this situation in the Middle East right now is protracted, the longer it stretches out and the more difficult it is for countries around the world to actually get their hands on oil, the price of oil will continue to go up. So the question we have to ask ourselves is how high it could actually go.
My next guest says potential disruption in the Strait of Hormuz, well, that could cause oil prices to surge as much to $100 a barrel. I want to bring it out Tortoise Capital, their senior portfolio manager, Rob Thummel. So let's talk about that, because the general thinking has been that the Strait of Hormuz is off limits for a variety of reasons. Number one, now China gets so much oil from Iran, that would disrupt them. Oman's a friendly neighbor to Iran. That would disrupt them. That gets a no-win situation. But you think it could still be on the table?
Well, I hope not, but because 20% of the global oil supply comes through the Strait of Hormuz, if there was any disruption in the potential oil supply, that would immediately cause oil prices to spike. So our hope is that that doesn't happen. The odds are pretty low, but it's not a zero probability that there will be some disruption in the Strait.
So Iran itself doesn't actually control the Strait of Hormuz, although it does have the greatest position to defend it. But like I said, there's many actors in this, so it's interesting to see if it actually plays out and it's able to close it down. As far as it holding back China from actually tapping into the fuel reserves that Iran holds from it. Now, because China is an ally of Iran, I'm sure there would be some kind of deal that they would get through, because those strategic partners, especially at this moment right now where conflict is on the horizon, would be so important to Iran. But as far as prices go, when we're looking at the conflict in its totality and where it can actually go, it really ranges. But as far as kind of the smaller conflict, no full ground invasion, it looks like prices are estimated to peak around 115. But even at 115, we would still be seeing prices at the pump probably around $4, $5, maybe even $6 as a national average. Now, when we're talking about states like California, of course, it's going to be much higher. In this article from Reuters, Goldman Sachs flagged risk to global energy supply amid concerns of potential disruption in the Strait of Hormuz that would lead to significant spikes in oil and natural gas prices, the bank said in a note dated Sunday. The bank estimated Brent crude could briefly peak at 110 per barrel if oil flows through the critical waterways were halved for a month and remained down by 10% for the following 11 months. Prices would then moderate, with Brent averaging around $95 per barrel in the fourth quarter of 2025. It said in a note. Oil prices jumped on Monday to their highest since January after Washington joined Israel over the weekend in attacking Iran's nuclear facilities. Goldman highlighted that prediction markets, despite limited liquidity, now reflect a 52% probability of Iran closing the Strait of Hormuz in 2025, citing data from Polymarket. Additionally, it noted that a drop in Iranian supply by 1.75 million barrels per day could push Brent to a peak around $90 per barrel. In one scenario, the bank said 1.75 million barrels per day. Drop in Iranian supply for 6 months, followed by a gradual recovery, could push Brent crude to peak at $90 per barrel before falling to the 60s in 2026. In the second sub-scenario, where Iranian production remains persistently low, Brent could still peak at 90, but stabilize between 70 and 80 in 2026 to reduced inventories and global spare capacity, Goldman Sachs said. While the events in the Middle East remain fluid, we think that the economic incentives, including for US and China, to try to prevent a sustained and very large disruption of the Strait of Hormuz would be strong. Iran's Supreme National Security Council must make the final decision on whether to close the Strait of Hormuz following U.S. bombing raids, Iran's press TV said on Sunday after parliament was reported to have backed the measure. Goldman Sachs also projected European natural gas markets, including the TTF benchmark, to price in a higher probability of disruption, with TTF potentially rising closer to 74 euros per megawatt hour. So the probability of gas prices going up significantly are near a certainty at this point. The question is how high they're actually going to go. This assumes that the only escalation is going to be the closure of the Strait of Hormuz, but if tensions escalate further, and this is actually moves into a hot conflict, there's actually potential for the price of crude oil to go to 150, 160, and in an all-out war, possibly even over $200 per barrel. If that was the case, we'd be looking at fuel prices averaging in America well over $10 a gallon at the pump. Not something that anyone wants, because the consequences of gas prices going that high would affect every aspect of the economy, not just fuel for your car and your household, but also for transportation of all goods coming in and out of the United States and moving those products around domestically. So the impact of price at the pump would also reflect in the cost of pretty much every item that you get at the store. Like I said, the situation is incredibly fluid right now, and we really have to wait to see what this is going to turn into as the conflict develops over the next days, weeks, and even months. Because as Iran has already said, that it's looking at American troops as open targets, but not just troops, but American citizens in general in the region and also throughout the rest of the world, calling for a target of 50,000 US troops to be taken out, which would absolutely pull America into a hot conflict. And if that's the case, like I said, there's much more we're going to have to worry about than fuel prices. But like I said, as we are right now, it is something that affects everybody in their daily lives, and it's something that we need to be aware of. So if you're at home or at work watching this right now, as soon as you're done, as soon as you have free time, please do yourself a favor, go to the gas station and fill up. It's the best thing you can do right now to really kind of catch the prices where they're at right now before they escalate even more. And be mindful that the longer this goes, the more expensive fuel prices will be. We're also going to see that reflect in the prices of everything at the store. So it's a good idea for everyone out there to go ahead and stock up on all those supplies. And even though the worst may not be ahead of us, it's still important for us to be prudent and prepare for the worst. So again, thank you for stopping by. As always, we appreciate the support. If you're still here, like and subscribe. We hope this doesn't go the wrong way. No one's really wanting this to escalate. This is an incredibly unpopular move throughout the entire American citizenry, with I think over 80% of people really questioning whether this is good or bad, and I think only 20% of Americans actually approving the strikes in Iran. So, we're going to see where this goes. Hopefully it doesn't go any further, but it really depends on the retaliation and the measures that Iran takes to really punish America and the West for their movements in Iran's sovereign territory. So we'll see where it goes. But again, thanks for stopping by, and we hope you have a good one.